We welcome you to the Shabbat Video Club. We're so happy you were able to join us, that you've taken the time to subscribe to this membership so that we can be a blessing to you by the word of Yahweh as you hunger and thirst after righteousness. Yahshua said, when you hunger and thirst after righteousness, he told us, his Talmidim, we shall be filled. Thank you so much for being a part of what Yahweh is doing in the two-house restoration and regathering of Israel in these last days. It's all about his word creating you, birthing you, preserving you, sealing you, keeping you, and then his word returning for you in the resurrection of the dead. You know, in Zechariah chapter 8, verse 23, there's a wonderful scripture that kind of shares what we're really all about. This says Yahweh of hosts. Again, go to Zechariah 8:23. It shall come to pass that 10 men will take hold out of all languages of all nations, and they will take hold of the wings, the tzitzit, the corners, the wings of him who is a Yehudite or a Jew, saying, we will go with you. We've heard Elohim is with you. So Yahweh says that in the latter days, all nations, speaking all languages, 10 men representing the 10 returning tribes of non-Jewish Israel, or the house of Ephraim, will come and they'll look and they'll seek and they'll find for someone who loves Yeshua, who's born again, and say, you know, we've heard you're a Jew born anew. And we know that you won't treat us as a Gentile, or as a heathen, or as a lucky to be saved Gentile, but as an equal heir. You'll treat us as an equal heir in Yisrael. That's why Yahweh has blessed me, my family, my ministry. Not that we're special, but Yisrael is special. And when we plug into his program, you come to me and say, hey, we'll grab your tzitzit because it's Yahweh who's with you. We're not really joining you. We're joining the Yahweh who is now with you. Take us away from the sons and the daughters of Greco-Roman religious theology and bring us back to Zion. And that's what this Your Arms to Israel Shabbat Video Club is all about. You and me being returned and restored, not just to Yahweh Eloheinu, Velohei Avoteinu, but being restored to each other as Echad. Now, let's grab hold. Let's grab hold and let's go together. Well, we're going to head south a little bit on that turnpike, right into the synagogue services this Shabbat in the Miami Beach Yisrael Revival and B'nai Yeshua Synagogue, home of the Miami Beach Yisrael Revival. We'll see you again when the smoke clears. Shabbat Shalom.
thoughts and the meditations of my heart be pleasing to you, Yahweh, my rock and my redeemer. Higul ratzoni vrepi vehigul lihi lefanecha, Yahweh tzuri v'goali. Yahweh, I enter your house. Oh, I bow down before you, Yahweh. Yishafke mayim bisaso mimahaye hayeshua. Mimaye hayeshua. With joy shall you draw from the waters of salvation. Yeshua.
Today.
Straight.
Good?
Yeah, we're straight.
Amen. So that's about Yahweh. How many have received your second edition of the Restoration Scriptures, True Name Edition? 6 pounds of meat, brother. Woo! If you don't get a chance to go to the gym, all you have to do is just go up and maybe do 3 reps of 10. Talk about the burden of the word. Here it is. 6 pounds of meat. And I'm already working on the renewed second edition. A lot of things I'm still upgrading. But this thing is flying. I mean, people are ordering this left and right. And you notice the difference between the first and second edition? Have you noticed the difference? Much less 2 pounds. And all the typos, what happened to all the typos? They're gone. Did you notice that? All the mistakes, all the spelling mistakes, typos, they're gone. You might find a handful, but we're almost there. Okay, the print is easier, the lines begin at the beginning of the verses, and we almost have that semi-perfect translation. Not perfect, because there's no such thing as a perfect translation.
Exactly.
The translators are imperfect, but we're getting closer. I've entitled today's message, preaching for a few hours, Removing the Big Butts.
Uh-oh. I like that. It's already
I'll
sound.
say it again. Again to this message, give me a little bit more bass on help, please. Removing the big butts.
That's tight.
Our dirty minds
Uh-huh.
start wandering and wondering what kind of a carnal, fleshly message is this going to be? But I want to show you that it is essential for all of us, not just for all of us, but also for me, for I as a translator, to make sure that as we work our way toward the most perfect translation we can produce, and I believe we're heading there. How many have had their minds blown by the second edition, that have gotten an advanced copy? By the second edition. It's a mind blower. It makes the first one look like peanut butter and jelly as opposed to filet mignon. But we still need to, all of us, myself included, we still need to somehow find a way to remove those big butts. Now, what on earth am I talking about? Turn to your neighbor and say, we've got to remove the big butts.
Let me see what you think first.
Don't feel convicted. I'm not talking to anybody. Trust me. I have nobody in mind.
That's the it.
I'm talking about the word of Yahweh. There's no condemnation to those who are in the side of Yeshua. Amen? Matidyahu, I'm talking about your sides or my sides. I'm talking about removing those big butts. Matidyahu 5 and 22. Matidyahu 5 and 22. Baruch Hashem Yahweh. Page 795, second edition.
Yes.
Baruch Hashem Yahweh. Beginning in Matthew 5:22, and continuing throughout the Sermon on the Mount, we find a word that continually comes into translations. Now, mind you, it's not a wrong translation when we encounter these buts. But they become big buts because they block the true understanding of what Yeshua is trying to say, or is saying, or trying to get across to us, or is getting across to us. We're the one trying to comprehend. And the religious system known as the Sunday system has a field day. So technically what I'm about to read is not a mistranslation, but how many know you can have an okay translation, but have an even better understanding? So even in the Restoration Scriptures, I've come to this understanding after the second edition. Now, almost every translation in the world, starting in Matthew 5:22, Matidyahu 5:22, has these words, but. But I realize that if we're going to get a more perfect translation, we're going to have to get rid of these big buts. Because religion has taken these buts and made a separate entity, separate from the historic people of Israel, called the Gentile church, whatever that is. It doesn't even exist. But they've made it because of these big buts. And so they've developed this system where they have historically separated themselves and they do not see themselves as Yisrael. Baruch Hashem Yahweh. So you'll see throughout the Sermon on the Mount this word in many situations. We're going to go there today. But however, we get the translation but from the Greek, but it can also mean, but the problem is the Greek translators or the other translators don't get it, okay? It can also mean and, so, therefore, however, moreover, and because. I'll say that again. The word in the Greek can also mean, rather than big but, can also mean or so, therefore, however, or moreover. But in the Aramaic, which is the original language of the Brit Hadashah, the word, it cannot mean but, and, so,
Therefore, one thing it does, it gets rid, the Aramaic word there, gets rid of all those big buts. Make sense? So that's what I want to do today in the type of spiritual surgery. I want to get rid of all those big buts. And the reason they're big buts is because of translations where they don't understand that the word but is one of the translation options, but is not the only option to translate. So it's technically, stay with me on this, technically, it's not wrong, but in light of 2,000 years of church history, where they don't see themselves as part of Israel, but as a separate Gentile entity, it has become a major stumbling block, therefore having to deal with these big buts. How come some of you are smiling? Okay, so in other words, technically it's okay to translate the Greek word as but you'll see in a minute, in Aramaic, the word has no options. The Aramaic word here, in all these verses that I'm going to go through with you, in the Sermon on the Mount, is the Aramaic word din, like Beit Din, house of judgment. But in this case, it doesn't mean house of judgment or judgment. In this case, it means din, or and, so, and therefore. And, so, and therefore. It does not mean, or it's not limited in the Aramaic to but. Now, I've spoken to Andrew Gabriel Roth, and he said, well, even English translations from the Aramaic, you translate it as but. But that's because we who speak Aramaic know that this doesn't really mean but. We who speak Aramaic know this actually means so, and moreover. So it doesn't bother us when someone translates the Aramaic word din into the English word but. It doesn't bother us because we know Aramaic. But those guys, meaning all other language speakers, it becomes a stumbling block to them, and that stumbling block needs to be removed. You understand what I'm saying? It says but in the text, no problem. I translated it but, no problem. It doesn't mean it's an incorrect translation. But in light of 2,000 years of church history seceding from the people of Israel, seeing themselves as separate from the people of Israel, it has become a historical problem. And so now we have to remove those big buts. And the way we start removing those big buts is by going to the Aramaic. Now, you won't find this in Ruach Kadim. You won't find this there. Okay, this is Moshe Kadim. And you won't find that in Andrew's book. This is what Yahweh has showed me over the last week. And you thought I was sitting home watching old reruns of To Tell the Truth.
Come on. Talk to me.
So the Aramaic word din is a thought switch. The word din is a thought switch, but it is not a contrasting word or a negation word of a prior truth. Do you understand? Din is a word that is a thought switch. In other words, what you heard the Prushim, the Pharisees, what you heard the Prushim say about X really means, in terms of application, Y. That's what din does. It joins two thoughts and processes these thoughts together, but it does not say that part A is invalid or removed by part B.
Wow.
We on.
How many are sleeping? Let me see your hand, please.
Oh, yeah.
You sleeping? You raise your hand.
Say that again.
Now,
Take him out and shoot him.
Yeah.
no, that's okay. I know you thought I meant how many are awake. I understand. So that's what din does. Din, boy, we've definitely got to remove some big butts. That's what din does. Din joins two separate thoughts together, but it does not invalidate A to establish B. So part A is never invalid by part B. Yeshua, by using the Aramaic word din, D-I-N, if you're taking notes, din, is actually not negating any part of the Torah.
Amen.
I know that's right. Now we're talking.
But you see, the problem with going with the Greek translation, where they take the Greek word and they solamente translate that into but. Now, I don't know what it is in other languages, but I would guess it's the same thing, but, right? What's that word, what, in Spanish? What's that word in verse 22?
Pero.
Huh?
Pero.
Pero. What does pero mean?
But.
But.
But
You gotta get rid of those big buts. See, in any language. The problem is, if the Brit Hadashah was written in what language? Aramaic. So the word deem is not limited primarily to but, it actually means and, therefore, so, because, or moreover. Does this make sense?
Right.
Make sense?
Yeah.
Baruch Hashem Yahweh. Yeshua, by using the word deen, actually does not negate any Torah. He establishes Torah. But what he does is he properly fulfills it by explaining what the sages should have said, and the way they should have been walking, and the way they should have understood, rather than the way they did understand, and rather than the way they did explain. Make sense? He's not saying, they say, but I'm saying, because I am the founder of the Catholic Church, and I've come to establish a New Testament church separate from those Christ-killing Jews, and so that whatever the Pharisees do, don't listen to them. You've heard them say, but I say, after all, I'm the son of Deus, so therefore you listen to me, and don't listen to them. See, now, you may not see it that way, but that's the way the translators saw it when they translated the Scriptures. That's exactly the way they saw things. And that's the way people have read this. The word but has a completely different connotation than the word so, therefore, moreover, nevertheless, notwithstanding. The word but is a word what? That puts everything in a context of what? Contrast. Right? The Jews say this, but since I'm starting a New Testament church, I'm saying this. Now, you may not think Yeshua came to start a separate Gentile entity apart from the historic people of Israel, but the average NTOC sees it exactly that way. What is NTOC? New Testament only Christian. When you were one of those? The average NTOC, New Testament only Christian, sees the Sermon on the Mount as a stern rebuke of the Jews, specifically the Jewish leaders. The leaders of the Jews say this, but I say to you, so that word but is a word of what? Contrast. Right? Contrast. And that's the way almost every language translates that word. But the Aramaic, and what language was the Brit Hadashah written in? Aramaic. The word is din, D-I-N, for those of you who should be taking notes, which actually is as I mentioned earlier, is a word that is a thought switch. It switches from the thought A to thought B without negating thought A. It's a thought switch. It's not a contrasting term. Comprende? That actually means if, but.
Oh. Well, that did it.
So Yeshua is saying what the old sages should have said, what they should have meant, what they should have been teaching is really this. Not that the Torah stinks, the Torah's law, it's Jewish legalism. I've come to abolish the law. I've come to start the age of grace. No. He's saying, you've heard them say it this way, now let me put it to you a different way. So, in other words, what's happening here, brothers and sisters, is very simply, listen, an in-house argument or an in-house midrash between different understandings of the constitution of the nation. It is not Yeshua rebuking the Jews. It is not Yeshua rebuking the Jewish leaders. It is not Yeshua changing the Torah, because one of the primary points of this Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5:17 is the following. Let's go to Matthew 5:17. Think not. Now, why would he have to say think not? Because Yeshua was Almighty Yahweh. Yeshua was omniscient. And in his omniscience, he knew that there would be NTOCs that would think that. So because he knew there would be NTOCs that would think that, he had to say, in the future, don't even think it. Hello?
Yeah. Amen.
In the future generations, in the future years, don't even think it.
Don't even think.
Don't think what? Don't even think. Don't even start thinking. Don't even entertain the thought that I have come to destroy, to weaken, or to destroy, verse 17, the Torah or the Nevi'im. I have not come to weaken or destroy, but to completely reveal in its intended fullness. The Hebraic idiomatic expression to destroy or weaken is to, listen, misinterpret. That's all it means. It does not mean destroy like you destroy an old structure. Destroy means I'm not here to misinterpret it like you bozos. I'm here to interpret it properly.
Amen.
That's what it means to destroy. When a rabbi would teach terribly, like I teach every Shabbat, and would not properly interpret the word of Yahweh, they would yell, "Rabbi, stop! You're destroying the word with your Famishtin Kop teaching. Ay, ay, ay. You're destroying the Torah. Stop before. Ay, you're confusing the students." So destroy was not destroy so I can establish a new center of worship in Rome. No. Destroy means, hey, I haven't come to misinterpret. I've come to do what? I've come to properly fulfill, meaning to bring to light the full original meaning in context that Yahweh gave his word. Make sense?
Makes sense. Perfect. Makes sense.
Let's try that again. Make sense?
Makes sense.
But truly I say to you, verse 18, amen, I say to you, until the current Shamayim, verse 18, and the current earth pass away, not one U, the smallest Hebrew Aramaic letter, or one nekudah shall by any means, point, mark, shall by any means pass from the Torah till all be fulfilled. Therefore, whosoever shall break or weaken one of the least Torah commands and teach men to do so will be least in the kingdom of Yahweh. Okay, so he starts his message after the Beatitudes